The fluorescent lights in the City Hall corridor buzzed with that particular frequency that made my jaw ache. I'd been standing here for 17 minutes, watching the second hand on the institutional clock crawl around its face while my appointment time came and went. The manila folder in my hands had grown damp where my thumbs pressed against it, leaving small crescents of moisture on the beige surface. Inside this folder was a single form: petition for name change, minor child. Specifically, the petition to remove Malhotra from my son's legal identity and replace it with my maiden name, Sharma, just Vihan Sharma. Clean. Simple. Mine. The waiting area smelled of floor wax, and the desperate hope that clung to everyone who entered a government building believing paperwork could solve their problems. I recognized that hope because I'd carried it myself for years, filling out forms for restraining orders that were never granted, filing reports that went nowhere, documenting incidents that always fell just short of what the law considered actionable. But this was different. This wasn't about protection or escape. This was about clarity. I shifted my weight, feeling the familiar ache in my lower back that came from too many double shifts at the hospital. As a registered nurse, I'd learned to read people through more than their words. I watched vitals, micro-expressions, the way someone held their breath when the pain got too intense to speak through. That skill had served me well in my marriage too, teaching me to recognize when Arjun's promises were genuine exhaustion speaking and when they were calculated misdirection. The last time I'd believed him was 4 months ago. He'd shown up at my apartment with Vihan's favorite dinner and that look in his eyes that used to undo me. Not the cold authority he wore for his business, but something softer, more uncertain. He'd asked for another chance. Not for us to move back into his world, but to try dating again. To see if we could build something new from the ashes of what we'd been. I'd said yes. God help me. I'd said yes. Because he'd been showing up for Vihan consistently for 2 years by then. Every scheduled visit, every school event, every moment he'd been exactly where he promised to be. And because part of me, the part I'd tried to silence, still remembered what it felt like to be the center of Arjun Malhotra's attention when it was fully, genuinely focused on you. For 3 months, it had been good. He'd kept boundaries I'd set. He'd introduced me to his legitimate business partners, the ones who ran the legal side of his empire. He'd been patient when I couldn't stay over because of my shift schedule. He'd even attended my hospital's charity gala, writing a check that funded our entire new pediatric wing without making it about him. Then came the evening he missed Vihan's birthday dinner because of an emergency meeting that couldn't be rescheduled. He'd arrived 2 hours late with expensive gifts and hollow apologies, and I'd seen in his eyes the same calculation I'd seen 6 years ago when he'd missed our anniversary for the 3rd time, when he'd chosen his empire over his family again. I'd ended it that night. Calmly. Finally. Without tears or recriminations, just a clear statement. I gave you another chance. You chose the same thing you chose before. We're done. He'd tried to argue, tried to explain the nuances I supposedly didn't understand about his responsibilities. But I'd spent 7 years married to those responsibilities. I understood them perfectly. I understood that I would always come second, and I was done accepting second place. The door to room 237 opened. A harried-looking clerk emerged, clipboard in hand. Sharma? Ananya Sharma? Here. I raised my hand slightly. Professional hospital habit. She gestured me forward. Sorry for the delay. The system crashed. We're running about 20 minutes behind. It's fine. I followed her through the doorway, my sneakers squeaking slightly on the linoleum. The sound reminded me of hospital corridors, of the thousands of miles I'd walked in these same shoes, taking care of other people's emergencies, while my own life fractured in slow motion. Room 237 was smaller than I'd expected. 2 desks, one occupied by an older man who didn't look up from his computer. A row of filing cabinets, a single window that looked out onto the parking structure. The clerk directed me to the empty desk and disappeared back into the hallway. I sat down, arranging my folder on the desk's surface. Through the window, I could see the concrete levels of the parking structure, the geometric precision of painted lines and numbered spaces. Everything in its place, everything labeled and organized. That's what I was doing here, putting things in their proper place. The door behind me opened again. I assumed it was the clerk returning, but the footsteps were wrong. Too measured, too familiar. I'd heard those footsteps on marble floors and Persian rugs, on the deck of his yacht, and the hardwood of our old bedroom. I turned in my chair. Arjun Malhotra stood in the doorway, frozen mid-step. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. No, I caught myself. I was done making those comparisons. Better to note what the suit told me. He was here on business, official business, the kind that required looking like a legitimate businessman, not the underground power broker we both knew he was. His dark eyes met mine, and I watched recognition followed by calculation flicker across his face. His 5 o'clock shadow was precisely trimmed, his hair styled with that casual perfection that took actual effort to achieve. He looked good. He always looked good. That had never been the problem. Ananya. My name and his voice still did things to my nervous system that I resented. What are you doing here? I held up my folder. I have an appointment. His gaze dropped to the manila folder, then back to my face. I saw the moment understanding hit, saw his jaw tighten infinitesimally. An appointment for what? That's not your concern anymore. I turned back to the desk, dismissing him. A small power move, but I'd learned to take my victories where I could find them. The hell it isn't. He moved into the room fully, and I heard the door close behind him. If it involves Vihan, it involves me exercising my legal rights. I kept my voice level, clinical, the tone I used with difficult patients' family members. You'll receive the appropriate documentation through your lawyer. Ananya, look at me. I didn't. I opened my folder instead, reviewing the form I'd filled out in triplicate. Name change petitions required multiple copies. Always multiple copies of everything when you were trying to separate yourself from a man with resources. His hand appeared in my peripheral vision, palm flat on the desk beside my folder. Not touching it, not touching me, just present. A reminder of his existence, his proximity, his unwillingness to be dismissed. You're changing his name. Not a question. A statement of fact delivered in that tone he used when he'd figured out someone's strategy 3 moves before they played it. I'm removing a surname that no longer reflects our family structure. I finally looked up at him, keeping my expression neutral. Vihan and I are Sharmas. We have been for 2 years. The paperwork is just catching up to reality. Something flashed in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, beneath the control. He's my son. And you can be his father with or without your name on his birth certificate. I held his gaze steadily. You've proven that, actually. You've been more consistent as his father post-divorce than you were during our marriage. This isn't about your relationship with him. This is about my need for clarity. Clarity. He repeated the word like it was foreign. You want to erase me from his identity for clarity? I want to erase the daily reminder that I once believed you'd change. The words came out sharper than I'd intended. I took a breath, modulating back to professional calm. I gave you another chance 4 months ago, Arjun. You blew it the same way you blew our marriage. Some things don't change, and I'm tired of pretending they might. The clerk chose that moment to return, bustling in with a stack of additional forms. She stopped short when she saw Arjun, her eyes widening slightly. Even people who didn't know exactly who he was recognized power when they saw it. I'm sorry, sir. This is a private appointment. If you need assistance, you'll have to schedule. I'm Arjun Malhotra. He pulled out his wallet, extracted a business card. I'm here regarding the petition filed by Ms. Sharma. As the father listed on the child's birth certificate, I believe I have a right to be present for these proceedings. The clerk looked at the card, then at me, clearly uncomfortable. Do you want him here, Ms. Sharma? No. I wanted to say no. I wanted him gone so I could do this one thing without his presence complicating it, without his eyes tracking every movement, without the weight of history pressing down on this sterile government office. But I'd learned in nursing that sometimes the kindest thing you could do was let someone be present for the pain. Let them see the consequences of their choices. Let them witness exactly what they'd broken. He can stay. I turned back to the clerk. Let's proceed. She hesitated, then nodded, sliding into the chair across from me. I'll need to verify the information on your petition. Full legal name of the minor child? Vihan Arjun Malhotra. The middle name had been Arjun's compromise when I'd wanted our son to carry my family's tradition. One small piece of me woven into his legacy. And you're requesting to change the surname from Malhotra to Sharma, correct? Correct. Reason for the request? I'd prepared for this question. I'd practiced the answer in my bathroom mirror, testing different phrasings until I found one that was true without being vindictive. To reflect the primary family unit. The child resides full-time with me, carries my medical insurance, and I am the primary decision-maker for all aspects of his care and upbringing. The name should reflect that reality. Behind me, I heard Arjun's breath catch. Just slightly. Just enough that someone who'd once counted his breaths in the dark would notice. The clerk typed rapidly. And the father's consent? Not required under Section 7(3) of the Family Code. I have sole legal custody. He has visitation rights, but name change decisions fall under my authority. I see. More typing. Then, carefully, Sir, do you wish to contest this petition? The room went very quiet. I could hear the buzz of the fluorescent lights again, the distant murmur of voices from the hallway, the click of computer keys from the other desk, where the man still hadn't looked up. Yes. Arjun's voice was tight. I wish to contest it. I'd expected this. Of course I'd expected this. Arjun Malhotra didn't surrender anything without a fight. I turned to look at him fully. On what grounds? On the grounds that you're making this decision out of anger, not what's best for Vihan. He'd moved closer, his hand now resting on the back of my chair. Not touching me, but close enough that I could smell his cologne. Sandalwood and something darker. The same scent that used to cling to my clothes after he held me. I'm making this decision out of lucidity, I corrected. There's a difference. Is there? He leaned down slightly, lowering his voice so only I could hear. Because from where I'm standing, this looks like punishment. I missed one dinner. You missed his birthday. I kept my voice equally low but sharp enough to cut. After promising me, after promising him, that you were different now. That we mattered more than your meetings and your empire, and whatever crisis your business manufactured to justify your absence. It wasn't manufactured. There was a situation. There's always a situation. I stood up, needing to not be beneath him, needing to meet him at eye level even though he still had 5 inches on me. That's the point you keep missing. There will always be a situation that matters more than us. And I'm done waiting for the day when we become the situation that matters most. The clerk cleared her throat. Perhaps we should reschedule this appointment. Give you both time to discuss. No. I said it at the same time Arjun did. Our eyes locked. I'm not going anywhere, he said quietly. This is my son's name you're trying to erase. I'm not erasing anything. I'm clarifying the truth. I turned back to the clerk. What's the process if he contests? She looked distinctly uncomfortable now. A hearing before a family court judge. Could take 4 to 6 weeks to schedule. Both parties present their case. Judge makes a determination based on the child's best interests. Fine. Schedule it. Ananya. Arjun's hand touched my elbow, just lightly. I pulled away before the touch could settle. Don't do this. Don't drag us through court over this. You chose to contest. I gathered my folder, suddenly desperate to leave this room, this building, his presence. I'm just following through. I headed for the door, but he was faster, moving to block my exit without actually touching me, a skill he'd perfected over years of controlling situations without overt force. Give me 10 minutes, he said. Just 10 minutes to talk about this. Not here, somewhere private. We have nothing to discuss. We have our son to discuss. And apparently your decision that he doesn't deserve to carry my family name. He deserves to carry the name of the parent who's actually present. I met his eyes, letting him see the exhaustion there. The years of second-place feelings finally calcified into something harder. You're a good father when you show up, Arjun. You're attentive and loving and everything a 6-year-old needs. But you're not consistent. And I'm tired of Vihan asking me why you missed his soccer game, why you weren't at his school play, why your important meeting mattered more than his big day. I attended every game this season except 2. I was at his play. I've missed 1 birthday dinner, Ananya. 1. 1 too many after you promised me you were different. The words hung between us. I watched him process them, watched him realize this wasn't about the dinner. It was about the pattern. The years of promises, followed by justifications, followed by apologies, followed by repeat. I am different, he said finally. I've restructured my businesses, delegated more, built systems so I can be present. 1 emergency in 4 months doesn't erase all of that. No, but it proves that when push comes to shove, you'll still choose the emergency over us. I stepped around him, reaching for the door handle. That's why his name needs to change, so he knows, legally and officially, that he belongs to the part of his family that will always choose him first. I pulled open the door and walked out before he could respond, before the familiar pull of his voice could make me doubt the decision I'd spent 2 years building toward. The corridor felt longer on the way out. My sneakers squeaked again on the linoleum. Behind me, I heard the door to room 237 close, then open again. Heard his footsteps following. I didn't turn around. I kept walking, counting steps like I counted vital signs. 43 steps to the elevator. 17 floors down to the parking garage. 2 years since I'd walked away from his penthouse with Vihan in my arms, and my dignity barely intact. And now, finally, the paperwork was catching up to that choice. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. I stepped inside and finally turned to face him. Arjun stood in the corridor, hands in his pockets, watching me with an expression I'd seen once before. The night I'd left, when he'd realized I actually meant it this time, that no amount of promises or power or desperate affection would change my mind. I'll see you in court, I said as the doors began to close. Ananya. He took 1 step forward, and I pressed the close door button. This isn't over. Yes, I said clearly, holding his gaze until the metal doors slid between us. It is. The doors sealed shut with a hydraulic hiss. My reflection stared back at me from the polished metal, distorted and wavering. The folder in my hands felt heavier than it should, like I was carrying more than just paperwork. I was carrying the weight of every morning I'd woken up alone in a marriage, every promise that had evaporated under the pressure of his responsibilities, every time I'd convinced myself that this time would be different. The elevator descended in silence, dropping through floors marked by amber lights. 17, 16, 15. I'd been counting since the day I left. 742 days since I'd filed for divorce. 531 days since it was finalized. 127 days since I'd made the mistake of believing he'd changed. 34 days since I'd ended it for the final time. And now, this. The last legal thread connecting us severed. Just a mother protecting her son from the instability of a father whose love was real, but whose priorities were immutable. The elevator reached the parking level. The doors opened onto concrete and fluorescent lighting, the antiseptic smell of car exhaust and motor oil. I stepped out, my footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. My car was parked on level P3, a 12-year-old Honda with 180,000 miles, and a persistent check engine light I kept meaning to address. It started reliably, got decent gas mileage, and cost less to insure than the luxury vehicles Arjun had once insisted I drive. It was practical. It was mine. I was halfway to it when I heard the door to the stairwell bang open behind me. Ananya, stop. I should have known he wouldn't wait for the elevator. Arjun had always preferred taking action to waiting for things to come to him. I kept walking. Go away, Arjun. Not until we talk about this. His footsteps quickened, closing the distance between us. Not until you explain to me why you're punishing our son for my mistakes. That stopped me. I turned slowly, feeling the anger that I'd kept carefully controlled in the government office finally beginning to leak through. I'm not punishing him. I'm protecting him. From what? From me? He'd closed the distance to 10 feet, close enough to talk without shouting, far enough to maintain the illusion of space. I'm his father, Ananya. I love him. I've never hurt him. You hurt him every time you break a promise. The words came out flat, factual. Every time you say you'll be there and then you're not. Every time he has to explain to his friends why his dad couldn't make it. You don't see his face when he realizes you've chosen something else over him. But I do. I'm the one who holds him while he cries himself to sleep. I'm the one who answers when he asks why you don't love him enough to keep your promises. Something cracked in his expression. He said that? Not in those exact words. He's 6. But that's what he means when he asks why you didn't come, why you were late, why you forgot. I shifted the folder to my other hand, needing something to do with the energy building in my chest. And you know what I tell him? I tell him that you love him very much, that you're doing important work, that sometimes grown-ups have responsibilities that are hard to explain. I lie to protect your relationship with him, Arjun. I've been lying for 2 years to make sure he doesn't hate you. I'm not asking you to lie. Then what are you asking? The question came out sharper than I intended. You want me to tell him the truth? That his father runs an empire that will always come first? That the meetings and emergencies and situations will always be more important than school plays and birthday dinners? That he should get used to being second, because that's just how it is with you? That's not fair. No, it's not. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. It's not fair that I spent 7 years waiting for you to choose us. It's not fair that every time I thought you were finally getting it, another emergency would prove me wrong. It's not fair that I stopped myself, biting back words I'd regret. But he'd heard enough. He always heard what I didn't say. You still what? I looked away, focusing on the concrete pillar behind him. It doesn't matter. It does to me. He moved closer, and I held up a hand to stop him. Don't. Just don't. He stopped, but his eyes never left my face. You still care. That's what you were going to say. Of course I still care. You're Vihan's father. We have a lifetime of coordinating schedules and splitting holidays and pretending to be civil at his graduation someday. I can't afford not to care. I forced myself to meet his gaze. But caring and trusting are different things. I care about you. I care about your relationship with Vihan. I care that you're safe and healthy because he needs his father. But I don't trust you anymore, Arjun. And without trust, there's no foundation for anything else. I can earn it back. No, when the word was final. You can't. Because I gave you that chance already. 4 months ago, when you asked me to try again, I gave you a chance to prove you'd changed. And you proved the opposite. You proved that when it matters, you'll always choose your empire. And that's fine. It's who you are. But I can't be part of that anymore. And I won't let Vihan's identity be tied to it either. A car alarm went off somewhere on another level, the sound echoing through the structure. We both ignored it. His name won't change anything, Arjun said quietly. He'll still be my son. I'll still have rights. I know. This isn't about your rights. It's about my need to draw a clean line. I gripped the folder tighter. When people ask about his name, I don't want to explain our history. I don't want to field questions about where his father is, why we're not together, whether reconciliation is possible. I want to be Ananya Sharma and my son Vihan Sharma, and let that be the end of it. It's not the end of anything. It's the erasure of our family. We stopped being a family when you chose your business over your marriage. The words tasted like old grief. We're co-parents now, cordial, functional, focused on what's best for Vihan. But we're not a family unit, and his name should reflect that reality. Arjun ran a hand through his hair, a rare break in his usual control. You think changing his name will give you closure? Will make it easier to move on? I think it's one step in a very long journey toward building a life that doesn't revolve around waiting for you to be who you promised you'd be. I never promised to be perfect. I never asked for perfect. I asked for present. I asked for you to choose us when it mattered. Just once I wanted to be the emergency that couldn't wait. I could hear the exhaustion bleeding into my voice. But that's not who you are. And I'm done pretending I can accept second place with grace. He was quiet for a long moment, studying me with an intensity that made my skin feel too tight. What if I resign? Walk away from it all? Don't. The word came out tired. Don't make offers you won't follow through on. I've heard them all before. I'm serious. If that's what it takes, it won't work. I shook my head. Because even if you walked away, you'd resent me for it. You'd resent Vihan. That empire is part of who you are, Arjun. It's in your blood the same way medicine is in mine. I can't ask you to cut out that part of yourself, and you shouldn't have to. We're just incompatible. It's that simple. There's nothing simple about this. No, I agreed. But the solution is, we co-parent. We maintain boundaries. We make sure Vihan knows he's loved. And we let go of the fantasy that we're meant to be anything more than two people who care about the same child. The car alarm finally stopped, leaving ringing silence in its wake. Somewhere above us, a car door slammed. Normal sounds of normal people living normal lives. I'll contest the name change, Arjun said finally. I'll fight this in court. I expected you would. I turned back toward my car. I'll see you at the hearing. Ananya. His voice carried a note I'd heard before, usually right before he made some grand gesture he thought would fix everything. This isn't how our story ends. I looked back over my shoulder. No, this is how it continues, without the illusion that it was ever a love story. It was a lesson. I learned it. Now I'm applying what I learned. I reached my car and unlocked it, sliding into the driver's seat before he could respond. Through the windshield, I watched him stand there in the middle of the parking structure, hands in his pockets, looking like a man who'd just lost something he didn't know he could lose. Good. Let him feel what I'd felt for 7 years. Let him understand what it meant to want something you couldn't have, to love someone you couldn't keep, to hope for a future that would never arrive. I started the engine and drove away, leaving him standing in the fluorescent lighting and concrete. In my rearview mirror, I watched him grow smaller, then disappear entirely as I rounded the corner toward the exit. The folder sat on my passenger seat, holding forms that would be contested, hearings that would be scheduled, legal battles that would unfold. But underneath all of it, one truth remained. I'd already left Arjun Malhotra. The paperwork was just making it official. The hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks out. I received the notice via certified mail on a Tuesday morning. The same day, Vihan came home from school with a black eye and a story that made my blood run cold. Cameron said my dad is a bad guy, he told me while I pressed a bag of frozen peas to his swollen eye socket. He said his mom told him that Malhotras are criminals, so I punched him. I sat very still on the edge of the bathtub, looking at my 6-year-old son who'd just used violence to defend a name I was trying to remove from his identity. The irony wasn't lost on me. Vihan, we don't hit people. But he was wrong. His uninjured eye blazed with conviction. Dad isn't bad. He helps people. He told me he makes sure families have homes and businesses stay open. That's not bad. I thought about all the ways Arjun had sanitized his empire for our son's consumption, the legitimate real estate development he emphasized while glossing over how he'd acquired the properties, the business consulting that was really enforcement and collection, the security services that were private armies for hire. Your father is complicated, I said carefully, using the talking points I'd developed with my therapist. He does some good things and some things that are harder to understand. But what matters is that he loves you very much. Then why are you changing my name? The question I'd been dreading, delivered with the devastating directness of childhood. Cameron's mom said you're trying to make me not be Dad's son anymore. I pressed my lips together, counting to 5 while I figured out how to explain this without vilifying Arjun or lying to my child. I'm not changing who you are or who your father is. I'm just updating paperwork to match our current family. You live with me. I make most of the big decisions about your life. And Sharma is my family name. It makes sense for us to share it. But I want to keep Dad's name too. Of course he did. Because despite everything, despite the missed birthdays and broken promises, Vihan loved his father with the uncomplicated devotion that 6-year-olds specialized in. He didn't see the pattern yet. Didn't understand that love without reliability was just another form of abandonment. That's something the judge will help us figure out, I said, removing the frozen peas to inspect the swelling. For now, you're staying home tomorrow. That eye needs 24 hours before you're going back to school. Am I in trouble? For hitting Cameron? Yes. We'll talk about better ways to handle people who say mean things. I kissed his forehead, careful to avoid the bruise. But I understand why you did it. Sometimes when someone attacks what we love, our first instinct is to fight back. He leaned against me, small and warm and still so young. Are you fighting with Dad because you love me? The question knocked the air from my lungs. Yes, baby. Everything I do is because I love you. Does Dad know that? I think so. Maybe you should tell him again. Sometimes people forget important stuff when they're mad. Out of the mouths of children. I held him closer, wondering how my 6-year-old had figured out what I'd spent 2 years trying to articulate. That sometimes love wasn't enough, and the people who forgot weren't doing it maliciously. They were just being who they were. After I tucked Vihan into bed with extra books and his favorite stuffed elephant, I called Priya. She answered on the second ring, already knowing something was wrong. What happened? I told her about the black eye, about Cameron's mother's comments, about the conversation that had followed. Priya listened without interrupting, the way she always did, letting me process aloud. So Arjun's not keeping this quiet, she said when I finished. The legal action is becoming public knowledge. Apparently. I poured myself a glass of wine I wouldn't drink, just needing something to do with my hands. Which means parents at Vihan's school are talking. Which means this is going to get messier before it gets better. Have you talked to Arjun about this? No. And I'm not going to. His lawyer can handle it. Ananya. Priya's voice carried gentle reproach. You're going to have to communicate with him eventually. Might as well start now before things escalate. Things escalated the moment he decided to contest the petition. I set down the wine glass, untouched. I'm done trying to manage his feelings about my choices. I'm not talking about his feelings. I'm talking about protecting Vihan from becoming collateral damage in whatever legal war you two are about to wage. She was right. Of course she was right. Priya had been my reality check since nursing school. The friend who told me what I needed to hear instead of what I wanted to hear. It was simultaneously the most annoying and most valuable thing about her. I'll think about it, I said, which we both knew meant I wouldn't. You're as stubborn as he is, you know that? I learned from the best. After we hung up, I stood in my small kitchen, looking at the divorce papers I'd framed and hung on the wall. A reminder, every day, of the freedom I'd earned. Priya thought it was morbid. I thought it was necessary. When you'd spent 7 years losing yourself in someone else's gravitational pull, you needed constant reminders that you'd escaped the orbit. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, but I recognized the pattern. Arjun had dozens of phones, cycling through them for security reasons I'd never fully understood. I almost didn't answer, then thought about Vihan's black eye and Priya's warning about communication. What? I heard about the incident at school. No preamble, no greeting. Pure Arjun efficiency. Is Vihan okay? He has a black eye and a bruised ego. He'll survive. I want to see him. It's not your visitation day. I don't care about the schedule. Someone hurt my son because of our legal battle. I want to see him. I closed my eyes, fighting the instinct to argue just for the sake of arguing. He's asleep. You can come tomorrow after school. I'll be at work, but I'll leave the spare key under the mat. Silence. Then, carefully, you trust me with unsupervised access to your apartment? I trust you to be a good father when you're actually present. What I don't trust is your ability to be consistently present. There's a difference. There's always a difference with you. Always conditions and qualifications. Yes, Arjun, that's what boundaries look like. You should try having some. I hung up before he could respond, immediately regretting the petty satisfaction of getting the last word. Priya was right. I was as stubborn as he was. The difference was that my stubbornness came from self-preservation. His came from believing the world should bend to his will. The next morning, I left the spare key as promised, along with detailed instructions about Vihan's medication schedule and dietary restrictions. I didn't leave a note. There was nothing left to say. My shift at the hospital was mercifully busy, a steady stream of patients that kept my mind occupied. Chest pain that was probably anxiety, a diabetic crisis that required 3 hours of careful intervention, a teenager with an asthma attack who reminded me painfully of Vihan, small and scared, and trying so hard to be brave. I was in the middle of hanging an IV when my phone buzzed. Arjun's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, focusing on finding the vein in my patient's arm. He called twice more during my shift. I ignored both calls, checking the voicemails only after I'd clocked out. The first message was brief. We need to talk about the hearing. Call me back. The second was longer. Ananya, I'm at your apartment. Vihan showed me his eye. We had a conversation about appropriate ways to defend family honor. I made him promise not to hit anyone else, and he made me promise to fix this situation so kids stop saying cruel things about us. I told him I'd do my best, but I need you to call me back so we can discuss strategy. This doesn't have to be a war. I deleted both messages and headed to my car. The parking garage was dark, most of the day shift having already left. My footsteps echoed in the empty space, and I felt the familiar prickle of awareness that came from being alone in deserted places. A black Mercedes was parked next to my Honda. Not just any Mercedes, I recognized it. Arjun's personal vehicle, The one he drove himself instead of using a driver, which meant he'd been waiting here. The driver's door opened. Kabir Singh, Arjun's head of security, stepped out. He was a mountain of a man, former military, with eyes that tracked threats the way mine tracked vital signs. "Ms. Sharma," he nodded politely. "Mr. Malhotra asked me to ensure you got to your car safely. That's not necessary." Nevertheless, he positioned himself between me and the rest of the garage, scanning the shadows with professional vigilance. "There's been some concern about your safety." I stopped walking. Concern from whom? People who've heard about the legal proceedings. People who have opinions about how families with our connections should conduct their private affairs. Arjun's connections, I corrected. Not mine. Not anymore. You're the mother of his child. That makes you family in ways that divorce papers don't erase. Kabir's expression remained neutral, but I heard the warning beneath the words. Some people might see the name change petition as disrespectful, might decide to express their displeasure. Are you threatening me? I'm protecting you. There's a difference. He gestured toward my car. Mr. Malhotra has arranged for security presence at your home and the hospital. You won't see us, but we'll be there. I don't want his security. It's not optional, not when Vihan's safety is concerned. Kabir's voice hardened slightly. You can be angry at Mr. Malhotra all you want, but don't let pride make you stupid about protecting your son. The words hit harder because they were true. I'd been so focused on my anger, on my need for independence, that I hadn't considered the broader implications of challenging Arjun publicly. He existed in a world where respect and reputation were currency, where perceived disrespect had consequences I'd tried to leave behind. Tell Arjun I'll accept the security, I said tightly. For Vihan's sake, but this doesn't change anything about the petition. I'll relay the message. Kabir stepped aside, allowing me to unlock my car. Drive safely, Ms. Sharma. I slid into the driver's seat, hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel. Through the windshield, I watched Kabir return to the Mercedes, watched the expensive car pull away with the silent grace of German engineering. This was the problem with loving someone like Arjun. You never fully escaped his world. Even when you left, even when you filed papers and changed names and built new lives, the shadow of his empire followed, protection and threat in equal measure. My phone buzzed again. This time, I answered. I don't need your security, I said without preamble. Yes, you do. Arjun's voice was tight, with something that might have been fear if I didn't know better. Word has gotten out about the petition. Some of my business associates are taking it personally. They see it as you publicly disrespecting me, which by extension disrespects them. That's their problem. No, Ananya, it's yours. Because these aren't people who send angry letters. They're people who express displeasure through action. And you've made yourself a target. I gripped the steering wheel harder. I'm filing paperwork with the city. That's not a declaration of war. In my world, it is. You're stripping my name from my son. You're doing it publicly, through legal channels that create official records. You're essentially announcing that I'm unworthy of having my family carry my identity. He paused. Whether or not that's your intention doesn't matter. That's how it's being interpreted. Then maybe you should explain to your associates that this is a personal matter that doesn't concern them. I have. But the problem with having a reputation for control is that any public challenge to that control becomes everyone's business. They're watching to see how I handle this. How I handle you. The words sent ice down my spine. I'm not yours to handle. I know that. You know that. But they see you as an extension of me whether you like it or not. And right now, you're an extension that's publicly defying me. That makes you a liability. So call off your dogs. I'm not the only one with dogs in this fight. His voice dropped lower, more urgent. There are people who want to use this situation to undermine me. They'll target you to get to me. That's why you need security. That's why you need to stop being stubborn and accept protection. I started the car, needing to be moving, needing to be anywhere but sitting still while Arjun explained how my attempt at independence had made me vulnerable. I'll accept the security, but I'm not dropping the petition. I'm not asking you to drop it. I'm asking you to understand the situation you've created. I created? Anger flared hot in my chest. I filed a legal petition through appropriate channels. You're the one who chose to contest it publicly. You're the one whose business creates these complications. Don't blame me for consequences that stem from your choices. This isn't about blame. It's always about blame with us, Arjun. Either you're blaming me for not understanding your world, or I'm blaming you for dragging me into it. Maybe the real problem is that we were never supposed to be in the same world at all. I hung up before he could respond, threw the car into reverse, and drove home through streets that suddenly felt less safe than they had that morning. When I arrived at my apartment building, I spotted them immediately. 2 men in a dark SUV parked across the street. Arjun's security, maintaining their discreet distance. Protection or surveillance. Maybe both. Inside, Vihan was curled up on the couch watching cartoons, his black eye vivid against his brown skin. He looked up when I entered, and I saw Arjun in his face, the set of his jaw, the intensity in his eyes. My son was going to grow up to be just like his father. Strong, stubborn, certain of his place in the world. I just hoped he'd also learn what his father never had, that sometimes the strongest thing you could do was walk away. Mom? Vihan's voice was small. Is Dad in trouble because of me? I sat down next to him, pulling him close. No, baby. None of this is because of you. Cameron's mom said, Cameron's mom doesn't know our family. She doesn't understand the choices I'm making or why I'm making them. I kissed the top of his head. All you need to know is that I love you, your dad loves you, and we're both doing what we think is best. Even if you don't agree on what's best. Especially then. That's what co-parenting means. We don't have to agree. We just have to both keep showing up for you. He was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, Dad said he's going to talk to the judge and explain that I want to keep his name. He said the judge listens to what kids want. My chest tightened. Of course Arjun would use Vihan's desires as ammunition. Not maliciously. He genuinely believed he was advocating for their relationship. But the effect was the same, positioning our son in the middle of our conflict. The judge will definitely want to hear what you think, I said carefully. But they'll also consider what's best for you overall. Not just what you want in this moment. What's the difference? Sometimes what we want isn't what we need. Like how you wanted to punch Cameron because he said mean things. You wanted to defend Dad, but what you needed was to walk away and tell a teacher. Vihan considered this with the serious concentration he brought to all difficult concepts. So you think I need to have your name even though I want to keep Dad's? I think you need stability and clarity. I think you need to know who your primary family is. And I think carrying my name reflects that reality. I turned him to face me. But I also think you need to know that no matter what name you have, you'll always be your father's son. Nothing can change that. Does Dad know you think that? I don't know what your father knows anymore. We don't communicate very well. Maybe you should try harder. That's what my teacher says when me and Cameron fight. She says we both have to try harder to understand each other. I pulled him close again, marveling at how a 6-year-old could cut through to the core of things adults spent years circling around. Your teacher is very wise. She also said Cameron has to apologize for saying mean things about you and Dad. He's supposed to do it tomorrow in front of the whole class. How do you feel about that? Weird. Like I won when I shouldn't have won because I hit him first. That's called moral complexity, baby. Welcome to being human. We sat together in comfortable silence, watching cartoons neither of us cared about, just being present in the same space. Outside, I knew Arjun's security team was watching. At the hospital, they'd probably already established a presence. In courtrooms and lawyers' offices, papers were being filed, strategies were being developed. A war was being waged over what name my son would carry into adulthood. But here, in this moment, in our small apartment with the second-hand furniture and the leaky faucet I kept meaning to fix, we were just a mother and son trying to figure out how to love the complicated man who connected us. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check your email. AM. I opened my email to find a message from Arjun with a single attachment. A photograph. Vihan's birth certificate, the original one from the hospital, with both our signatures at the bottom. Mine neat and precise. His a bold scrawl that took up twice the space. Below the image, a message. This is what I'm fighting for. Not the name itself. The promise we made when we signed this, that we would both be his parents, equally, permanently, regardless of what happened between us. You're trying to erase me from his official identity. I'm trying to hold you to the promise we made 6 years ago. If that makes me the villain in your story, I'll accept that. But I won't accept being erased. I stared at the screen for a long time, feeling something crack in my carefully maintained anger. Because he was right. When we'd signed that certificate, when we'd chosen to give Vihan his surname, we'd been making a promise. That Arjun would be fully present in his son's life. That his name would mean something beyond legacy and empire. He'd broken that promise in 1,000 small ways over 6 years. But he was trying to keep it in the only way he knew how. By fighting to maintain his legal connection to his child. I understood that. I even respected it. But I also knew that sometimes love meant knowing when to let go. When to stop fighting and start accepting reality. When to acknowledge that good intentions didn't equal good outcomes. I didn't respond to his text. There was nothing to say that wouldn't lead us back to the same circular arguments we'd been having for years. Instead, I pulled Vihan closer and focused on the present moment. On the weight of my son against my side, on the sound of his laughter at the cartoon, on the piece of our small, complicated, beautiful life. 4 weeks until the hearing. 4 weeks to prepare my case. To gather evidence of why this name change served Vihan's best interests. 4 weeks of Arjun doing the same from his perspective. And then a judge would decide which one of us was right. Or more likely, which one of us had made the better argument. Because that's what it always came down to in the end. Not what was true, but what could be proven. Not what was right, but what was legal. Not what we felt, but what we could articulate in terms a court would understand. I was good at articulation. Years of nursing had taught me to document everything, to translate complex medical situations into clear, defensible language. I could do the same with our history. I could make the judge understand why this change was necessary. The question was whether Arjun could make them understand why it wasn't. Outside, the SUV's engine started, the security team changing shifts. My life now included surveillance schedules and protection protocols, all because I'd tried to take control of one small aspect of my identity. Priya was right. I was as stubborn as Arjun, but I'd learned that stubbornness from him, and if he thought I'd back down just because things got complicated, he'd forgotten who he'd been married to. I hadn't survived 7 years with Arjun Malhotra by being fragile. I'd survived by being strategic, by picking my battles and fighting them with everything I had. This was my battle. This was my line in the sand, and I wasn't backing down. The lawyer Arjun hired was named Rohan Patel, and he had the kind of smile that made you want to check your wallet after shaking his hand. We met in his office downtown, all glass and steel and furniture that cost more than my yearly salary. I'd brought Priya for moral support and my own lawyer, a family practice attorney named Mrs. Chen, who charged reasonable rates and didn't smile at all. Ms. Sharma. Rohan gestured to the leather chairs across from his mahogany desk. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Mr. Malhotra thought it might be productive to discuss settlement options before we proceed to court. There's nothing to settle. I remained standing, unwilling to sink into furniture designed to make visitors feel small. I filed a petition. He contested. Now a judge will decide. Surely there's room for compromise. Rohan opened a folder, all professional efficiency. Mr. Malhotra has authorized me to propose several alternatives that might address your concerns while maintaining his parental rights. His parental rights aren't in question. This is about a name, not custody. Nevertheless, Rohan pulled out a document. Proposal 1. Vihan keeps Malhotra as his legal surname, but adds Sharma as a middle name. This way, both family names are represented. No. Proposal 2. Hyphenated surname. Malhotra Sharma or Sharma Malhotra. Your preference. No. Ms. Sharma. Mrs. Chen touched my arm gently. Perhaps we should hear all the proposals before. I know what he's doing. I kept my eyes on Rohan. He's trying to negotiate away my decision. But this isn't a business deal. This is my son's identity, and I'm the one with legal authority to determine it. Rohan leaned back in his chair, reassessing. Mr. Malhotra anticipated you might feel this way, which brings us to Proposal 3. He slid another document across the desk. He's willing to restructure his visitation arrangement, give you more time, more control over scheduling. In exchange, you withdraw the name change petition. I picked up the paper, scanning the terms. Additional weeknight visits, extended summer custody, increased child support. Every single thing I'd asked for during our divorce proceedings and been told was impossible because of his business obligations. He's bribing me. I set the paper down carefully. He's offering to be a better father in exchange for keeping his name on our son's birth certificate. He's offering to prioritize his son more. Rohan corrected. Isn't that what you wanted? What I wanted was for him to do it because it was right, not because I threatened his ego. I pushed the document back across the desk. The answer is no to all 3 proposals. We'll see each other in court. I turned toward the door, but Rohan's next word stopped me. He said you'd refuse. Said you were too principled to accept anything that looked like you were backing down. There was something in his voice that made me look back. He also said to tell you that he understands why you're doing this, that he deserves it, but that Vihan deserves better than being caught in the middle of your justified anger. Don't. The word came out sharp. Don't pretend to understand our history or what Vihan deserves. You're a lawyer being paid to win a case. That doesn't make you qualified to comment on our family dynamics. You're right. Rohan stood, and for the first time, his professional mask slipped slightly. But I've worked for Mr. Malhotra for 8 years. I've seen him build an empire, eliminate rivals, make decisions that affected thousands of lives. I've never seen him afraid of anything. He paused. Until this. Until the possibility of losing his connection to his son. He's not losing anything. Isn't he? You're removing his name from the child he created. You're legally severing the tie that says they belong to each other. You can tell yourself this is just paperwork, but we both know it's more than that. Rohan picked up the proposals, tucking them back into the folder. He'll see you in court, Ms. Sharma. But before that day comes, ask yourself one question. Is this really about what's best for Vihan? Or is it about making Arjun feel what you felt for 7 years? We left without responding, Mrs. Chen murmuring platitudes about staying focused on our case. But Rohan's words echoed in my mind during the elevator ride down, during the walk to Priya's car, during the drive back to my neighborhood. He had a point, Priya said finally, breaking the silence. About your motivations, You think I'm doing this out of spite? I think you're doing this out of hurt. And hurt looks a lot like spite when you're the one causing it. I stared out the window, watching the city scroll past. We'd moved from the gleaming downtown district into neighborhoods that actually felt like neighborhoods. Corner stores and community centers and people who walked instead of being driven. I remember the first time Arjun missed Vihan's doctor's appointment, I said quietly. Vihan was 3 months old, running a fever that wouldn't break. I was terrified it was meningitis. I called Arjun from the emergency room, and he promised he was on his way. He never showed. I sat there for 6 hours holding our sick baby, and he was in a meeting he deemed more important than his son's health. Priya didn't respond, just drove and listened. The fever broke. It was just a virus. But sitting there alone, I realized something. I would always be alone in the ways that mattered. Arjun would show up for the big moments, the births and birthdays when it looked good. But the quiet emergencies, the everyday fear and exhaustion and need, those would always be mine to handle. And you've handled them. Beautifully. Vihan is healthy and happy and well-adjusted despite everything. Because I made sure his father's absences didn't define him. I built a life where we were complete without Arjun, where his presence was a bonus, not a necessity. I turned to look at her. So yes, maybe I am hurt. Maybe I am angry. But I'm also right. Vihan's life is built around me. His name should reflect that. What if he doesn't want it to? The question I'd been avoiding. Then I'll explain why I made this choice when he's old enough to understand. When he can see the pattern himself instead of just feeling abandoned by it. We pulled up to my building. The security SUV was parked in its usual spot, a constant reminder of the world I'd tried to leave behind. Priya noticed it too. How long is Arjun planning to maintain the security presence? Until he decides I'm not in danger anymore. Or until I move somewhere he can't find me. You can't run from this. I'm not running. I'm standing still. He's the one who keeps finding me. I got out of the car, thanked her for coming, and headed inside. The apartment was empty. Vihan was at Arjun's for his scheduled visit. I should have been relieved to have the evening to myself, but the silence felt oppressive. My phone rang. Arjun's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, then remembered he had our son. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. His voice was careful, controlled. Vihan wanted to talk to you. Dad said I can't have pizza for dinner because I had it yesterday at school. Vihan's indignant voice filled my ear. But I really want pizza. I closed my eyes, fighting a smile. Then have something else tonight and pizza tomorrow. But I want it now. Vihan Arjun Malhotra, you will eat what your father prepares, and you will not complain about it. Do you understand? Yes, Mom. Appropriately chastised. Love you. Love you too, baby. There was a pause, then Arjun's voice returned. Thank you for backing me up. I'm not backing you up. I'm parenting. There's a difference. Is there? Because it felt like we were on the same team for about 30 seconds there. I sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. We're always on the same team when it comes to Vihan. That's never been the problem. What is the problem then? Because I'm trying to understand, Ananya. I really am. The problem is that you think understanding will change my mind. That if you just explain yourself well enough, I'll see that you're right and I'm wrong. I picked at a loose thread on the couch cushion. But this isn't about who's right. It's about what I need to move forward with my life. And you need to erase me? I need to stop being defined by you, by our history, by the choices you made that shaped my entire existence for 7 years. The thread came loose in my hand. When people hear Malhotra, they think of you, your empire, your reputation, your power. I want people to hear Sharma and think of my son. Not your son. Mine. He's ours. Biologically, yes, but in every way that matters. In whose arms he falls asleep, who knows his teachers' names, who remembers he's allergic to shellfish, who signs his permission slips and makes his lunches and holds him when he has nightmares. He's mine. And his name should reflect that reality. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, do you remember the night he was born? I didn't want to go there. Didn't want to revisit the one perfect moment in our relationship, the few hours when everything had felt right. Arjun. You'd been in labor for 19 hours. The doctors were talking about C-section. You were exhausted and frightened and still so strong. His voice softened with memory. I held your hand and you nearly broke my fingers, but you did it. You pushed through and brought him into the world. I remember looking at him for the first time and thinking that I'd built an empire, eliminated rivals, commanded respect from dangerous men. But this tiny human who depended on us completely, was the first thing I'd ever created that actually mattered. My throat tightened. Why are you telling me this? Because when the nurse asked what we were naming him, you looked at me and said, Vihan Arjun Malhotra. You gave him my name without hesitation. You tied him to me permanently, legally, completely. And I thought... He paused. I thought it meant you believed in us. That despite everything, you thought we'd make it. I did believe that, for a long time. Too long, probably. And now you're taking it back. The name, the belief, the connection. I'm accepting reality. That's different. Reality. He said it like the word tasted bitter. Our reality is that I love you both more than anything in my life, but I keep failing to prove it in the ways you need. And your reality is that my love isn't enough because it doesn't come with the consistency you deserve. We're both right and both wrong, and our son is caught in the middle. Then stop fighting me. Let me give him a name that reflects the parent who's actually consistent. I can't do that, because the moment I do, I'm admitting that I'm not essential to his life, that he's better off without my name, which means he's better off without me. His voice roughened. I can accept a lot of things, Ananya. I can accept that you stopped loving me. I can accept that I failed as a husband, but I can't accept being erased from my son's identity. No one is erasing. That's exactly what you're doing, and maybe I deserve it. Maybe this is justice for all the times I chose wrong. But Vihan doesn't deserve to grow up wondering why his mother wanted so badly to remove all traces of his father. The words hit like physical blows. That's not what this is. Then what is it? Explain it to me in a way that doesn't sound like punishment. I couldn't. Because maybe it was punishment. Maybe underneath all my rational justifications and legal arguments, I was finally making Arjun feel a fraction of what I'd felt for 7 years. Making him understand what it meant to be systematically erased, to be chosen second, to watch someone you love prioritize everything else above you. I have to go, I said, my voice unsteady. Vihan needs dinner. We already ate. Pizza, actually. I caved. Despite everything, I smiled. You're a terrible disciplinarian. I know. That's why we're a team. You enforce rules, I break them and teach him that love includes flexibility. It's a system. It's chaos. It's worked for 6 years. Has it? Because it seems like it's falling apart right now. Only because you're dismantling it. He sighed. I'll have him back by 8 tomorrow. And Ananya, I'm not going to stop fighting this. Not because I don't respect your decision, but because I can't respect a decision that tells my son I'm not permanent in his life. He hung up before I could respond. I sat in the empty apartment, holding the phone, feeling the weight of his words settling over me like a blanket I couldn't shake off. Was he right? Was I punishing him? Or was I finally standing up for what I needed? The problem was, I wasn't sure anymore. And the court date was in 2 weeks. My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Chen. "We need to discuss your testimony. Can you come to my office tomorrow?" I replied, confirming the appointment, then opened my photo gallery. It was a compulsion I'd developed over the years, scrolling through images of Vihan's life. First steps, first day of school, birthday parties and Halloween costumes and lazy Sunday mornings. In the early photos, Arjun was everywhere. Holding a newborn Vihan, his face soft with wonder. Teaching a toddler to walk, crouched down with outstretched arms. Reading bedtime stories with Vihan curled against his chest. Then the photos changed. Arjun appeared less frequently. The images were mostly of Vihan and me. His father present only in occasional weekend visits, scheduled events, the dutiful appearances of a man who loved his son but couldn't quite manage to prioritize him. This was what I'd show the judge. The visual evidence of a child whose life was built around his mother, whose father was important, but not essential, whose name should reflect the parent who'd been there consistently. It was a strong case. Mrs. Chen had said so. The evidence supported my petition. The law was on my side. So why did I feel like I was making a terrible mistake? The courthouse smelled like old wood and anxiety. I'd dressed carefully that morning. Professional but not wealthy. Put together but not trying too hard. Every detail mattered. Every impression counted. Vihan sat between Priya and Mrs. Chen in the gallery, his small legs swinging nervously. The judge had decided to interview him privately in chambers, but first she wanted to hear from both parents. I'd tried to prepare him, to explain what was happening in age-appropriate terms. But how do you tell a 6-year-old that his parents are asking a stranger to decide what he should be called? Arjun sat across the aisle with Rohan, looking devastatingly competent in a navy suit. He'd nodded to me when we arrived, but hadn't approached, keeping his distance, following the rules of engagement we'd never explicitly discussed, but both understood. All rise. The Honorable Judge Lakshmi Reddy presiding. We stood as the judge entered. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-40s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She settled into her seat, reviewed the papers before her, then looked up at both of us. "This is a name change petition for a minor child, Vihan Arjun Malhotra, filed by the mother, Ananya Sharma. The father, Arjun Malhotra, is contesting. I've reviewed all submitted materials. Now I'd like to hear directly from both parents." She gestured to me. "Ms. Sharma, you filed the petition. Please explain your reasoning." I stood, my prepared speech suddenly feeling inadequate. "Your Honor, I'm requesting to change my son's surname from Malhotra to Sharma to reflect the reality of his primary family structure. Vihan resides with me full-time. I make all major decisions regarding his education, healthcare, and daily care. I attend all school functions, manage his schedule, and provide the consistent presence he needs. And you believe changing his surname serves his best interests how? It provides clarity. When teachers, doctors, and other authority figures see our names, they'll immediately understand our relationship without requiring explanation. It also protects him from the negative associations that sometimes accompany the Malhotra name due to his father's business activities." Arjun's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. "Additionally," I continued, "it represents a clean break from a family structure that no longer exists. Vihan needs to understand that his nuclear family is himself and me. His father is important, but he's not part of our daily household. The name should reflect that reality." Judge Reddy made notes, then turned to Arjun. "Mr. Malhotra, your response?" Arjun stood with the same controlled grace he brought to everything. "Your Honor, I'm contesting this petition because it's based on a false premise. that my son's name should reflect only his primary residence rather than both of his parents equally. I am Vihan's father. I love him, support him financially and emotionally, and maintain a consistent presence in his life through scheduled visitation and unexpected visits. The petition mentions concerns about negative associations with your name. How do you respond to that? I run legitimate businesses, Your Honor. Real estate development, property management, security consulting. Any negative associations stem from rumors and speculation, not proven criminal activity. I've never been convicted of any crime. My son shouldn't be punished for his father's reputation, particularly when that reputation is largely manufactured by people who don't understand my business operations. It was a carefully crafted response, technically true while glossing over the reality of how he'd built his empire. But this wasn't a criminal trial. The judge wasn't here to investigate his business practices. Ms. Sharma claims you're not consistently present in Vihan's daily life. I'm present within the constraints of our custody arrangement. I have him every other weekend and 1 weeknight per week. I attend school events when my schedule permits. I pay child support that exceeds the court-ordered amount. I'm engaged in my son's life to the fullest extent Ms. Sharma allows. There it was, the subtle shift of responsibility, making it sound like I was the one limiting his involvement. Your Honor, I interjected, Mr. Malhotra's schedule permits very little. He routinely misses visits due to business emergencies. He was 2 hours late to Vihan's birthday dinner just 4 months ago. His engagement is inconsistent at best. Because my work involves genuine emergencies that can't always be rescheduled, Arjun countered. I own multiple businesses that employ hundreds of people. Sometimes crisis management is required. That doesn't mean I don't prioritize my son. It means you prioritize him when convenient. That's enough. Judge Reddy's voice cut through our exchange. This isn't a forum for airing grievances. I'm interested in what serves Vihan's best interests, not in litigating your failed marriage. She paused. I'd like to interview the child now. In chambers, with just myself and a court-appointed child advocate. Both parents will wait here. My heart sank. This was the moment I'd been dreading. Vihan alone with a judge, trying to articulate feelings he barely understood himself. They brought him back after 20 minutes. His face was red, eyes wet. He'd been crying. The sight of it made my chest ache. Judge Reddy returned to the bench, her expression unreadable. I've had an illuminating conversation with Vihan, bright child, very articulate for 6. What did he say? I asked, breaking protocol. He said he loves both his parents very much, that his mother takes care of him every day, knows everything about him, makes him feel safe, and that his father is exciting and fun and makes him feel special. She looked between us. He also said he doesn't understand why his name has to change, that he likes being a Malhotra because it connects him to his father, but he loves his mother more because she's always there. Arjun's expression cracked slightly. The last part had landed exactly as I'd hoped and feared. Based on my conversation with Vihan and the evidence presented, I'm making the following ruling. Judge Reddy's voice took on formal tones. The petition to change Vihan's surname from Malhotra to Sharma is denied. My world tilted. Your Honor, however. She held up a hand. I'm ordering a modification to the custody arrangement. Mr. Malhotra, you will have Vihan every other weekend as currently scheduled, but you will also have him every Tuesday and Thursday evening from after school until 8 p.m. No exceptions for business emergencies, unless you can prove genuine life or death circumstances. Miss 2 consecutive visits without court-approved reason, and will revisit this entire arrangement. Arjun stood straighter. Your Honor, my business schedule will accommodate your son, or you'll lose the right to contest decisions like this one. Ms. Sharma is correct that Vihan's name should reflect his primary family structure, but that structure should include both parents to the extent possible. You want to keep your name on his birth certificate? Then you'll prove you deserve it by showing up consistently. She gathered her papers, I'm also ordering both parents to attend co-parenting counseling. 6 sessions starting within 2 weeks. You'll learn to communicate about your son without using him as a weapon against each other. Any questions? I had 1,000 questions. None of them would change her ruling. No, Your Honor. Mr. Malhotra? No, Your Honor. Good. Bailiff will provide you with the modified custody schedule and counseling referrals. Court is adjourned. She left the bench. I stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. I'd lost. The name wouldn't change. Vihan would remain a Malhotra, tied to his father's legacy whether I liked it or not. But Arjun had lost too. He'd been ordered to show up more frequently, to prove his commitment under threat of losing his ability to contest my decisions. The judge had essentially called his bluff. Vihan ran to me, wrapping his arms around my waist. Am I in trouble? No, baby, you're not in trouble. I stroked his hair, blinking back tears. Everything's okay. Do I keep Dad's name? Yes. Good. He looked up at me with those eyes that were so much like Arjun's. Cameron's mom said I should hate Dad, but I don't want to hate anyone. Is that okay? That's more than okay. That's exactly right. Arjun approached slowly, like approaching a wild animal that might bolt. Can I talk to you? Not now. Ananya? I said not now. I took Vihan's hand. Come on, baby, let's go home. We made it to the parking lot before I broke down. Priya drove while I cried silently in the passenger seat, Vihan mercifully distracted by a tablet in the back. I'd been so sure, so certain that I was right, that the judge would see what I saw, that justice meant validating my perspective. Instead, I'd been told I was wrong, that my hurt feelings didn't outweigh Arjun's legal rights, that my desire for a clean break wasn't sufficient reason to erase his name from our son's identity. You okay? Priya asked quietly. No. It's not all bad. She ordered him to show up more. That's what you wanted. I wanted it to be his choice, not a court order he'll resent. Maybe he'll surprise you. I doubted it. Arjun responded to incentives and consequences, not moral obligations. He'd show up for the required visits, because failing to do so would cost him legal standing. But the heart wouldn't be in it. And Vihan would sense that, would internalize the difference between chosen presence and obligated attendance. My phone buzzed. A text from Arjun. Can we talk about the new schedule? I want to make this work. I didn't respond. I was too raw, too defeated, too angry at myself for caring that he was trying. That evening, after Vihan was in bed, I sat in my small kitchen with a glass of wine I actually drank this time. The modified custody order lay on the table, stark black text on white paper. 2 additional weeknight visits. Mandatory attendance unless life-threatening emergency. 6 co-parenting counseling sessions. It was more than I'd had before the petition. More structure, more accountability, more of Arjun's time committed to his son. By any objective measure, I'd won something valuable even if I'd lost the central battle. So why did it feel like I'd been defeated? Because I'd wanted validation. I'd wanted a judge to look at our history and declare me right, and him wrong. I'd wanted official confirmation that my pain was justified, my decisions sound, my perspective the correct one. Instead, I'd gotten a ruling that said we were both partially right and partially wrong. That Vihan needed both of us, even if we couldn't stand each other. That my desire for independence didn't override his need for his father's presence. The doorbell rang. I considered ignoring it, then remembered the security detail outside. They wouldn't let anyone dangerous through. I opened the door to find Arjun standing in the hallway, still in his court suit, looking as exhausted as I felt. I told you I didn't want to talk. I know, but I need to say something, and you need to hear it. He didn't wait for permission, just walked past me into the apartment. You were right. About everything. I've been inconsistent. I've prioritized my business over Vihan too many times. I've broken promises and made excuses and justified my failures by pointing to my successes. I closed the door, crossing my arms defensively. If you're here for absolution, I'm here to tell you I'm sorry and to ask for your help. That stopped me. Arjun didn't ask for help. Ever. What kind of help? The judge ordered me to show up every Tuesday and Thursday. I want to do more than show up. I want to actually be present, but I don't know how. He ran a hand through his hair. I don't know his routine. I don't know what homework looks like for first graders. I don't know his friends' names or his favorite foods or what time he needs to be in bed on school nights. I've been a weekend dad who swoops in for fun and leaves before the real work starts. Teach me how to be more. I stared at him, searching for the manipulation, the angle he was working. But all I saw was genuine exhaustion and what might have been fear. Why now? Because a judge ordered you to? Because I almost lost him today. Not physically. I know you'd never keep him from me. But I almost lost my right to have a say in his life. And sitting in that courtroom, listening to you describe how much more present you are, how much more you know about our son, I realized you were absolutely right. I've been failing him, and I don't know how to stop failing him without your help. The request was so unexpected, so vulnerable, that I didn't know how to respond. I can't fix you, Arjun. I'm not asking you to fix me. I'm asking you to teach me how to be the father Vihan deserves. Show me your routines. Explain how you manage everything. Help me understand what consistent presence actually looks like. And if I say no, then I'll figure it out on my own, and I'll probably mess it up, and Vihan will suffer for it. But I'm hoping you won't say no. Not for me. For him. He was right, damn him. This was for Vihan. And despite everything, despite my anger and hurt and desire for distance, I wanted my son to have an engaged father. Fine, but I have conditions. Name them. 1. You don't cancel Tuesday and Thursday visits. Ever. If you absolutely must be late, you call me an hour in advance. 2. You learn his routine and stick to it. Homework before TV, healthy dinner, in bed by 8:30. 3. You communicate with me about his life. Teacher notes, friendship drama, food preferences, everything. 4. The first time you blow this off, we're done. I won't give you another chance to disappoint him. Agreed. Just like that. I told you. I'm serious about this. I nearly lost my son today. I'm not making that mistake twice. He moved toward the door, then paused. Thank you, Ananya, for agreeing to help, and for fighting so hard for him, even when that meant fighting me. After he left, I sat back down at the kitchen table, staring at the custody order with new eyes. Maybe I hadn't lost after all. Maybe I'd won something more valuable than a name change. Maybe I'd won the beginning of the consistent co-parent I'd always needed Arjun to be. Or maybe I was being naive again, believing promises I'd heard too many times before. Only time would tell. The first Tuesday evening arrived with all the awkwardness of a first date between people who'd once been married. Arjun showed up at 3:45 p.m., 15 minutes early, dressed in jeans and a casual button-down that I'd never seen him wear before. He looked almost normal. Almost like any other father picking up his son from school. I brought groceries. He held up reusable bags. Whole wheat pasta, vegetables, chicken breast. I Googled healthy dinners for 6-year-olds. Despite myself, I was impressed. He likes broccoli if you roast it with olive oil and garlic. Hates it steamed. Noted. He set the bags on the counter. Anything else I should know? He has math homework, 3 pages. He'll try to convince you it's too hard, but he actually understands it. He just doesn't want to do it. So I insist he completes it before any screen time. Exactly. We stood in my small kitchen, this strange dance of domesticity between us. It felt surreal. For 7 years of marriage, Arjun had barely noticed where the kitchen was. Now he was memorizing Vihan's homework patterns. "I'll have him back by 8, Arjun said. "But can I bring him here instead of my place? His routine is here. His room, his toys. I don't want to disrupt that." Another surprise. "You want to parent him in my apartment?" "I want to learn his actual life, not create an artificial one at my penthouse. If you're comfortable with that." I wasn't comfortable with it. Wasn't comfortable with Arjun in my space, learning the rhythms of our daily existence. But it was what Vihan needed. "Fine, but you're cooking in my kitchen, which means you clean up properly, and you don't rearrange anything." "Understood." Vihan burst through the door then, backpack dragging behind him, face lighting up when he saw his father. "Dad, you're here. Every Tuesday and Thursday from now on, remember?" Arjun crouched down, pulling Vihan into a hug. "Ready to hang out? Can we play video games? After homework." Arjun stood, ruffling Vihan's hair. "Your mom says you have math tonight. Math is boring. Math is important. Come on, show me what you're working on." I watched them settle at my small dining table, Vihan pulling out crumpled papers while Arjun examined them with genuine interest. This was what I'd wanted, what I'd begged for during our marriage. Arjun present, engaged, learning his son's world, instead of expecting Vihan to fit into his. I retreated to my bedroom, giving them space. Through the door, I could hear Vihan explaining his homework, Arjun asking questions that were actually helpful rather than condescending. It was nice. Uncomfortable, but nice. My phone buzzed. "Priya, how's the first weeknight visit going?" He brought vegetables and Googled healthy dinners. Holy shit. Maybe the judge scared him straight. Or he's performing for a few weeks before reverting to form. You're such an optimist. I'm a realist who's been disappointed too many times to believe in sudden transformations. But over the next 3 weeks, Arjun showed up. Every Tuesday, every Thursday, never late, never with excuses. He learned Vihan's routine by watching me, by asking questions, by taking notes on his phone like he was studying for an exam. He learned that Vihan needed transitional time after school before starting homework, that he ate better if food was presented as choices rather than demands, that he was afraid of the dark but embarrassed to admit it, so nightlights needed to appear casually throughout the apartment. The co-parenting counseling started on a rainy Wednesday evening. The therapist, Dr. Meera Joshi, had kind eyes and a bullshit detector that rivaled mine. She sat us down in her office and asked the question that cut through all our careful defenses. Why do you think you failed as partners? I'd prepared for this, because Arjun prioritized his business over his family consistently for 7 years, because every promise came with conditions, because I was never his priority. Mr. Malhotra? Because I thought providing financially was the same as providing emotionally, because I didn't understand that Ananya needed presence more than presence. Because I was building an empire and forgot that empires are empty without people to share them with. The honesty surprised me. Usually Arjun deflected, justified, reframed. But here, in this neutral space, he was being remarkably direct. "And now?" Dr. Joshi asked. "What's different?" "Now I understand what I lost," Arjun said. "And I'm trying to prove I can change, not to win Ananya back. I know that's not happening. But to be the father Vihan deserves. Ms. Sharma, do you believe he can change?" I wanted to say no. Wanted to protect myself from disappointment by assuming the worst. But I'd been watching him for 3 weeks, seeing the effort, the consistency, the genuine engagement. "I believe he's trying," I said carefully. "Whether he can sustain it long-term remains to be seen." "Fair enough. Let's talk about communication patterns." The session covered ground we'd fought over for years. My need for transparency, his tendency to compartmentalize, my desire for emotional connection, his reliance on action over words, my fear of abandonment, his fear of vulnerability. Dr. Joshi gave us homework, daily check-ins about Vihan, even on days they didn't see each other. 5-minute conversations to share small updates, maintain connection, practice communicating without conflict. "This feels like we're dating," I said after the session, standing in the parking lot while rain drizzled around us. "Would that be so terrible?" He asked it lightly, but there was weight underneath. "Yes, because dating implies possibility, and there isn't any. We're co-parents. That's all we can be. Even if I prove I've changed?" "Proving you've changed as a father doesn't mean you've changed as a partner. Those require different skills." "What if I want to develop both?" I looked at him standing in the rain, expensive coat darkening with moisture, eyes holding something I couldn't quite name. Hope? Determination? Desperation? "Don't do this, Arjun. Don't confuse good co-parenting with romantic possibility. We tried twice. It didn't work either time. Because I wasn't ready. I am now. You're ready to be Vihan's father. That's not the same as being my partner. How do you know if you won't give me the chance to show you? Because I can't survive another disappointment from you. The first time nearly broke me. The second time taught me to stop hoping. There won't be a third time." I walked to my car before he could respond, before the look in his eyes could make me doubt my carefully maintained boundaries. That night, lying in bed, I thought about the patterns of our relationship. How Arjun always seemed most committed when I'd already walked away. How his promises came most frequently when he'd already broken the previous ones. How his understanding of what I needed arrived only after I'd stopped needing it from him. It was a cycle I recognized from nursing. Patients who swore they'd change their lifestyle after a heart attack, who maintained new habits for weeks or months, then gradually reverted to old patterns once the fear faded. Trauma created temporary transformation. Sustained change required something deeper. Was Arjun capable of that deeper change? Or was this just another cycle of crisis-motivated promises? Week 5 of the new custody arrangement. Arjun had been perfect. Not a single missed visit, not one excuse or late arrival. He'd learned to cook 3 of Vihan's favorite meals. He'd memorized his school schedule, his friends' names, his current obsession with dinosaurs. He'd also started texting me daily with small updates. Vihan said he wants to try soccer. Should we sign him up? Found a book about dinosaurs at the library. Can I get it for him? He mentioned his friend Dev's birthday party. Do we need to buy a gift? They were good texts, thoughtful co-parenting communication that showed investment and care. They also made me remember why I'd fallen in love with him. This version of Arjun, attentive, present, genuinely interested in building something meaningful, was the man I'd thought I'd married. The man who'd appeared in flashes throughout our relationship but never stayed long enough to become permanent. "You're softening toward him," Priya observed over coffee. "I can see it. I'm appreciating his effort as a co-parent. That's different." "Is it? Because you've got that look you used to get, the one that says you're hoping again despite knowing better. I'm not hoping for anything except consistency." Liar. She was right, damn her. Some part of me, the part I'd tried to kill through 2 years of single parenting and hard-won independence, was starting to hope again. Starting to wonder if maybe, possibly, this time could be different. I hated that part of myself, hated its stubborn optimism, its refusal to learn from experience, its willingness to risk more pain for the possibility of something better. Week 6 brought parent-teacher conferences. Arjun showed up in a suit, straight from a business meeting. But he'd made it on time, which was what mattered. Vihan's teacher, Ms. Anita Kumar, smiled at both of us. "It's wonderful to have both parents here. Vihan's been doing so well lately. His math scores have improved significantly." He's been getting extra help on weeknight visits with his father, I said, giving credit where due. That's excellent. Family involvement makes such a difference. Ms. Kumar pulled out Vihan's recent artwork. He drew this last week, asked me to make copies so he could give one to each parent. The drawing showed 3 stick figures, a small one in the middle, holding hands with larger figures on either side. Me, Mom, and Dad was written in careful 6-year-old letters beneath. He said he wished you all lived together again, Ms. Kumar added gently, but that you were both really good at taking care of him separately. I felt Arjun tense beside me. This was the reality we couldn't escape. Our son wanted what we couldn't give him. A unified family. Parents who loved each other as much as they loved him. We're working on being the best co-parents we can be, I said, using the phrase Dr. Joshi had taught us. That's what matters most. After the conference, we stood in the school parking lot while other parents streamed past. Arjun still held the copy of Vihan's drawing, looking at it like it contained secrets. He wants us together, he said finally. Kids often do after divorce. It's normal. Is it normal that I want it too? My heart stuttered. Arjun, I'm not asking for anything. I'm just being honest. He looked up from the drawing. These past 6 weeks have reminded me what we could have been if I'd gotten my priorities straight earlier. Watching you with him, learning your routines, being part of your daily life. It's shown me everything I gave up when I chose my empire over my family. You can't have both. You proved that conclusively. What if I could now? What if I finally figured out how to balance? Stop. I held up a hand. Just stop. You've been doing great as Vihan's father. Don't ruin it by confusing good co-parenting with romantic possibility. They're not the same thing. They could be. For us. There is no us. There's you and me, separately committed to raising Vihan well. That's all this is. Is it? Because the way you look at me sometimes, the way you smile when I do something right with him, that's not just co-parenting appreciation. He was seeing things I'd tried to hide. The softening Priya had noticed. The hope I was fighting against. What you're seeing is relief that you're finally being the father I always needed you to be. Don't mistake my relief for romantic interest. And if I think it's more than relief, then you're wrong. I started toward my car. I'll see you Thursday for your regular visit. Ananya. He caught up in 2 strides. I'm falling in love with you again. Or maybe I never stopped. But watching you these past weeks, your strength, your consistency, your devotion to our son, I'm remembering everything I loved about you and discovering new reasons every day. Don't say that. Why not? Because it's inconvenient? Because it complicates the clean boundaries you've established? Or because some part of you feels the same way and it terrifies you? Because it doesn't matter what either of us feels. We tried twice, failed twice. Some things are just impossible, and we're one of them. What if we're not? What if the timing was just wrong before? But now? There is no now. There's your custody time and my custody time and coordinating schedules and sharing our son. That's it. Anything else is fantasy, and I'm done living in fantasy. I got in my car and drove away, leaving him standing in the parking lot holding our son's drawing of the family we'd never be. But as I drove, I couldn't stop thinking about his words, about the possibility he was suggesting, about the tiny, treacherous part of me that wanted to believe him. The text came at 2:47 a.m. on a Thursday. I jerked awake, heart pounding, reaching for my phone with shaking hands. In my world, middle-of-the-night texts meant emergencies. There's been an incident. Vihan is safe with me. Don't panic. I'll explain in person. A. I was out of bed and dressed in under 3 minutes, calling Arjun while I grabbed my keys. He answered on the first ring. What happened? Where is he? My penthouse. He's asleep in my guest room. Unharmed. His voice was tight, controlled. But there was an attempted break-in at your apartment building tonight. My security team intercepted the intruders before they reached your floor. Ice flooded my veins. What? They were coming for you, for Vihan. A message to me from people who've decided that interfering with my family is an acceptable way to conduct business. He paused. This is my fault. My world. I'm so sorry, Ananya. I'm coming there now. I'll have Kabir meet you in the lobby. The drive took 12 minutes that felt like hours. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly they ached. Someone had tried to break into my apartment. Had been planning to, what? Hurt us? Kidnap Vihan? Use us as leverage against Arjun? This was the world I'd tried to leave behind. The reason I'd filed for divorce, fought for sole custody, tried to remove his name from our son's identity. Because being connected to Arjun Malhotra meant being a target for everyone who wanted to hurt him. Kabir was waiting when I arrived, professional and alert despite the hour. Ms. Sharma, Vihan is fine, sleeping peacefully. Mr. Malhotra stayed with him until he fell asleep. Who were they? The people who broke in? Representatives of a rival organization. They've been making moves against Mr. Malhotra's interests for several months. Tonight was an escalation. Have they been arrested? Kabir's expression didn't change. They've been handled. I didn't ask what that meant. Didn't want to know the details of how Arjun's world dealt with threats. I just needed to see my son. Arjun met me at his penthouse door. He looked exhausted, hair disheveled, still wearing the same clothes from yesterday. He's sleeping. I didn't want to wake him and scare him. You should have called me immediately. My first priority was securing him, making sure there were no other threats. Once he was safe, I called you. I pushed past him into the penthouse, heading straight for the guest room. Vihan lay curled under expensive sheets, his stuffed elephant clutched to his chest. Perfectly peaceful. Completely unaware that men had tried to reach him tonight. How did they get past your security at my building? I asked, keeping my voice low. They didn't. My team intercepted them in the parking garage before they could access the building. But they were armed, Ananya. They had plans for your apartment layout. They knew which unit was yours, which bedroom was Vihan's. They'd been watching you for weeks. The violation hit me like a physical blow. Watched. For weeks. While I'd gone about my daily life, taking Vihan to school, working my shifts, building our small, peaceful existence, someone had been cataloging our movements. Why now? Why escalate to this? Because I've been winning. Taking territory, eliminating their revenue streams, building alliances that leave them isolated. They needed leverage. You and Vihan are the only leverage that would work. He leaned against the doorframe. This is what I've always feared, that loving you both would make you targets, that my world would reach out and destroy the only things that actually matter to me. So what now? We go into hiding? Live in fear? Wait for the next group that decides we're useful leverage? Now you move here. Both of you. This building has security that your apartment complex can't match. My team can protect you better if you're centralized. Absolutely not. Ananya, I'm not moving into your penthouse and pretending we're a family just because your enemies made threats. That's not protection. That's control disguised as care. It's both. I won't deny wanting you close, wanting to rebuild what we had. But this isn't manipulation. This is genuine concern for your safety. He moved into the room, keeping his voice low to avoid waking Vihan. 3 men tried to reach you tonight. They had weapons. They had plans. They weren't coming to scare you. They were coming to take you, to hurt Vihan if necessary. Do you understand what that means? I did. I understood perfectly. And I hated it. Hated that he was right. That my small, safe life had been an illusion. That danger had been circling while I'd pretended we were free of his world. "I need coffee." I left the guest room, heading for his kitchen. Arjun followed silently. His kitchen was all marble and stainless steel, designed for caterers rather than actual cooking. But he'd stocked it with the basics in the weeks since he'd started spending time at my apartment. Real food, the kind Vihan actually ate. I made coffee mechanically, hands shaking slightly. Arjun stood on the other side of the counter, giving me space to process. "How long?" I asked finally. "How long have you known we were being watched?" 2 weeks. I increased security presence immediately. Had teams tracking the surveillance. I thought I could handle it quietly without frightening you. You should have told me. Would you have believed it wasn't manipulation? Or would you have accused me of manufacturing threats to force you back into my life? He had a point. I would have been suspicious. Would have questioned his motives, looked for angles, because that's what our history had taught me, that Arjun's protective instincts and controlling tendencies looked identical from the outside. What happened to them? The men who tried to break in. They're no longer a concern. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting, because you've made it clear you don't want to be part of my world, and that includes the details of how I handle threats. He poured his own coffee. But they won't be coming back. Neither will anyone else they were working with. You're sure? I'm sure. When I eliminate problems, they stay eliminated. The words should have frightened me. Instead, they brought a grim sort of relief. Because this was the side of Arjun that had built an empire. The ruthless calculator who didn't just react to threats, but removed them entirely. I can't live here permanently. I'm not asking for permanent. I'm asking for temporary. Until we're certain the threat is resolved and no retaliation is coming. How long is temporary? Weeks, maybe months, however long it takes. I thought about my apartment, my small space that had been mine, that had represented independence and autonomy and freedom from his influence. Someone had violated that tonight, had planned to hurt my son in that space. I couldn't go back there. Not without seeing intruders in every shadow, danger in every unfamiliar sound. Separate rooms, I said finally. Clear boundaries. This is protective custody, not reconciliation. Agreed. And I'm not giving up my job. I'll work my regular shifts. Your security can follow me if necessary, but I'm not becoming some imprisoned princess. Agreed. And we're still just co-parents, nothing more. This situation doesn't change that. He was quiet for a moment. If that's what you need it to be. It is. Then that's what it will be. And we moved our essentials the next day. Priya helped, her expression darkening as I explained what had happened. "This is insane," she said, hanging my clothes in the walk-in closet that was larger than my entire bedroom. "You're moving in with your ex-husband because his enemies tried to kidnap you. This is not normal life, Ananya." "I know." "And you're sure this isn't just another way for him to control you?" "I'm not sure of anything anymore. But I know I can't keep Vihan safe in that apartment, so I'm making the choice that keeps him protected, even if it costs me independence." "What about what it costs you emotionally? Living here with Arjun? Pretending to be a family while maintaining boundaries? That's going to shred you." She was probably right. But the alternative, returning to an apartment that had been surveilled, that had nearly been breached where my son had been targeted, was impossible. "I'll manage," I said, hanging up the last dress. I always do. The first week was awkward. Vihan loved it, of course. He had both parents under one roof, a massive bedroom, and a father who was home every evening. For him, this was everything he'd wished for when he drew that picture at school. For me, it was complicated torture. Because Arjun was being perfect. Coming home at reasonable hours, eating dinner with us every night, helping with homework without being asked, learning my rhythms and adapting to them instead of expecting me to adapt to his. He was being the partner I'd begged him to be for 7 years. And it was happening now, when I'd finally built walls high enough to protect myself from disappointment. "You look exhausted," he said one evening after Vihan was in bed. We sat in his living room, the city spreading beneath us through floor-to-ceiling windows. "Not sleeping well?" "The bed is too soft. I'm not used to luxury mattresses. I can get you a different mattress." "Don't. I'll adapt." "You don't have to adapt to everything, Ananya. It's okay to ask for what you need." "What I need is for this situation to be temporary. What I need is to go back to my life." "Your life was being surveilled by dangerous people. Is that really what you want to return to?" "I want to return to independence, to not being dependent on your protection, your resources, your world." "Why is accepting help so difficult for you?" "Because help from you always comes with strings. Hidden costs I don't discover until it's too late to back out." He flinched slightly. "I deserve that, but this time there are no strings. You can leave whenever you want. The door isn't locked. You're not a prisoner." "Aren't I? If I leave, I'm putting Vihan at risk. That's a pretty effective lock." "The threat was real, Ananya. I didn't manufacture it to trap you here." "I know. That's what makes this so difficult." I stood, needing distance. "Because you're being genuine for once. Actually protective instead of controlling. And I don't know how to accept that without it meaning something I'm not ready for it to mean." "What would it mean?" "That you've finally become the man I needed you to be years ago. That maybe, possibly, we could try again. That hope isn't as dead as I've been telling myself." I turned to face him. "But hoping for you has broken me twice already. I can't survive a third time." "What if you don't have to survive it? What if this time it works?" "You can't promise that. No one can promise that." "No. But I can promise to keep trying. To show up every day. To prioritize you and Vihan above everything else. To be the man I should have been from the beginning." He stood too, moving closer but not touching. "I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I've used up all reasonable opportunities. But if you could find it in yourself to consider—" "No." The word came out more forcefully than I intended. Arjun stopped, the hope in his expression fading. "I can't consider anything right now. I'm living in your penthouse because men tried to break into my apartment. My sense of safety has been shattered. My independence has been compromised. And you're standing here asking me to add emotional vulnerability to that list?" I shook my head. "I can't. I'm at capacity for risk right now." "I understand. Do you? Because you've been perfect lately. Showing up, being present, doing everything right. But I've seen this pattern before. You're perfect when there's a crisis. When you've almost lost something. Then things normalize, and you revert to old habits. I can't invest in this version of you because I know the other version is still there, waiting to resurface. What if it's not? What if I've actually changed? Then prove it with time. Not weeks, not months, years. Show me that this consistency isn't crisis-motivated but genuinely who you've become. Then maybe, I'll consider the possibility." He nodded slowly. "Years. I can do that." "Can you? Can you really be this version of yourself for years without expecting anything in return? Without resentment building? Without reverting to type?" "I don't know, but I'm willing to try. Because you and Vihan are worth more than anything else I've built." The words were right. The sentiment was right. Everything about this conversation was everything I'd wanted to hear during our marriage. But I'd learned the hard way that words were cheap. That Arjun could say all the right things without meaning them long-term. That his intentions were always good even when his follow-through wasn't. "We should get some sleep," I said instead of responding to his declaration. "Morning comes early." I retreated to my guest suite, closing the door firmly behind me, leaned against it until I heard his footsteps fade down the hallway toward the master suite. This was impossible. Living here, seeing him every day, watching him be everything I'd needed while maintaining boundaries that protected me from hoping again. It was emotional whiplash, torture disguised as protection, but I'd survive it, because I'd survived worse, because my capacity for endurance was apparently endless, because I'd learned to function while heartbroken, and I could learn to function while confused too. 3 months passed. The threat never materialized again. Arjun's enemies had apparently learned their lesson, or been eliminated. I didn't ask which, but we stayed. Because Vihan was happy, because the routine worked, because leaving felt like admitting defeat, and I'd never been good at giving up. Arjun maintained his consistency. Home every evening, present for Vihan, respectful of my boundaries, never pushing, never asking for more than I could give. It was driving me insane. "You're falling for him again," Priya observed during one of her visits. "Despite your best efforts." "I'm not falling for anything. I'm just coexisting." "You're looking at him the way you used to, before everything fell apart, like he's home." Was I? I didn't want to examine it too closely. Didn't want to acknowledge that maybe, possibly, the walls I'd built were developing cracks. It doesn't matter how I look at him. This situation is temporary. Is it? Because it's been 3 months and you haven't mentioned moving back to your apartment. It's still being renovated. New security systems. That was finished 6 weeks ago. She was right. The apartment had been ready for weeks. I'd been making excuses. That night, I finally asked Arjun the question that had been building. When can we leave? We were in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner. Vihan was absorbed in a puzzle in the living room, domestic and comfortable and dangerously normal. "You can leave whenever you want. I told you that from the beginning." "I mean, when is it actually safe? When will your enemies stop being a threat?" He was quiet for a moment, drying a dish with more attention than necessary. "There'll always be a potential threat. That's the nature of my world. But the immediate danger has passed." "So we could leave now?" "Technically, yes. But I don't want you to." He set down the dish, meeting my eyes. "I've loved having you both here, coming home to you every evening, helping with homework, bedtime stories, all the small domestic moments I missed for years. I don't want to go back to scheduled visits and careful boundaries and being an outsider in my son's daily life. This was always temporary. Was it? Because it's felt permanent to me. It's felt like maybe we were finally getting it right. Arjun, I know, you're not ready. You may never be ready. And I've accepted that." He moved closer, careful not to crowd me. "But I need you to know that these 3 months have been the happiest I've been in years. Not because I've kept you here or controlled the situation, but because I've had the privilege of being part of your daily life again, of earning your trust incrementally, of proving through action instead of words that I've changed. 3 months isn't proof. It's a good start. Then give me more time. Stay here. Not because you have to, but because you want to. Because this works. Because Vihan is thriving. Because maybe, just maybe, you're not as opposed to this as you keep telling yourself." I wanted to say no. Wanted to maintain my boundaries, pack up our things, return to the independence I'd fought so hard to achieve. But he was right about one thing. Vihan was thriving. He had both parents present, a stable home, consistent routines. He was happy in a way he'd never been before. And maybe, just maybe, I was happier too. "1 more month," I said finally. "We'll stay 1 more month. Then I'm reevaluating. No promises beyond that. 1 more month. He smiled, genuine and relieved. I'll take it. That month became 2, then 3, then 6. We never officially decided to stay. It just kept being easier to remain than to leave. Easier to maintain the routine than to disrupt it. Easier to accept this strange domestic arrangement than to face what leaving would mean. On a Thursday evening, 9 months after moving in, Arjun came home with papers. What are those? Legal documents. Transferring ownership of this penthouse into both our names. Equal shares. He set them on the counter. I want you to know this is your home. Not because I'm allowing you to stay, but because it belongs to you too. I stared at the papers, understanding what he was offering. Security, permanence. A gesture that said this wasn't temporary anymore, that he saw this as our life now. I can't accept this. Why not? Because accepting it means admitting this is permanent, that we're building something together, that I'm not just here temporarily for Vihan's safety. Aren't you building something together? Haven't we been for 9 months? I couldn't argue with that. We had been building something. A partnership that looked nothing like our marriage but worked better than anything we'd attempted before. I'm scared, I admitted quietly. Scared to believe in this. Scared to hope again. I know. I'm scared too. But maybe being scared together is better than being safe separately. He picked up the papers, folding them. You don't have to decide now. Just think about it. Think about whether this life we've built is something you want to keep building. With me, as partners. I took the papers, feeling their weight in my hands, a decision compressed into legal documents. That night, I sat in the darkness of my guest suite, reading through the ownership transfer. It was straightforward, no hidden clauses, no strings attached, just an equal share of one of the most valuable properties in the city. Through the door, I could hear Arjun moving around, getting ready for bed, living his life parallel to mine in this space we'd been sharing. 9 months ago, I'd been determined to remove his name from our son's identity, to sever all legal ties beyond necessary co-parenting. Now, I was considering adding my name next to his on property documents, choosing to be legally bound to him in new ways. The irony wasn't lost on me, but maybe that was the point. Maybe the name change petition had never been about erasing him. It had been about me taking control, asserting my importance, demanding to be seen as essential rather than auxiliary. And now, 9 months later, I was being seen. Being valued, being offered partnership instead of being expected to exist in his shadow. This wasn't the relationship we'd had before. This was something new, built on mutual respect, consistent effort, and the hard-won understanding that came from failing spectacularly and choosing to try again anyway. I signed the papers, not because I believed in fairy tale endings, not because I'd forgotten the years of hurt or the patterns I'd fought against. I signed because I believed in this imperfect, complicated, hard-won version of us. The version that had been tested and had somehow emerged stronger. The next morning, I handed Arjun the signed documents. Does this mean what I think it means? He asked carefully. It means I'm choosing to build something with you, not the relationship we had before. Something new, something better. I met his eyes, but I'm still scared, still waiting for you to revert to type, still protecting myself. I understand. And I need you to understand that this isn't forgiveness for the past. It's faith in the present. Those are different things. I know. He pulled me closer, and I let him. Let myself lean into him for the first time in years. Thank you for having faith. I'll spend every day trying to earn it. Vihan found us like that, standing in the kitchen, holding each other while morning light streamed through the windows. He looked at us with the wisdom of a child who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Does this mean we're staying? He asked. Yes, I said, and felt Arjun's arms tighten around me. We're staying. Not because I'd been forced, not because I'd been manipulated, but because I'd chosen it. Chosen this complicated man, this imperfect situation, this hard-won partnership that looked nothing like what I'd imagined, but felt more real than anything I'd built alone. The name on Vihan's birth certificate hadn't changed. He was still Vihan Arjun Malhotra, but I was different, stronger, more certain of my worth and my voice. And maybe that had been the point all along. Not to erase Arjun from our lives, but to force him to earn his place in them. To prove through consistent action that he deserved to be there. He'd proven it. Day by day, visit by visit, 9 months of showing up. And now we had the rest of our lives to keep proving it to each other.